Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, I am 3 days away from covering an Ohio State football game ish in Ohio Stadium with you. So I'm great. How about you?
Well, I'm doing okay, except I didn't get any tickets for the game because I wanted to
Mm.
throw them on the secondary market and make a quick buck again. Get out like spend $10 for two tickets and sell, maybe sell them for like $100 a piece, and then go out for dinner afterwards. I was going to buy everybody dinner after the game.
Which is crazier to you? 100,000 people fill Ohio Stadium in a year when they're charging $5 a seat, or people are presumably willing to spend $100 to go watch like half of a scrimmage inside Ohio Stadium. Which
The
one? Which
hundred
one is
bucks,
crazier?
the $100 for a scrimmage for a spring game. I guess maybe also not having a spring game last year, like because if you've been to spring games, and I know a lot of people listening have, it's exciting for I don't know a quarter or maybe two, and then things get, and even to say exciting, interesting is probably a better word than exciting. And then by the third quarter, people are leaving, and by the fourth quarter, what was 100,000 is down to 50. I do wonder how long the 20,000 and 19,000 strong will stick around, given that I'm not sure all of them are diehard spring game fans who normally do this type of thing. So, yeah, the $100 for a spring game. I love the fact that they're crazy or interested Ohio State fans to that level, but I don't know that the bang is worth the buck, considering we're not even sure exactly what we're going to see on Saturday.
Well, I think we're going to see probably, I mean, based on what Ryan Day has said, it sounds like we'll have like about one half of a scrimmage ish. And then after that, it's probably going to be more situational stuff after halftime. I'm guessing it's going to be about 2 hours, give or take. I don't, they generally will, once they roll through the guys who they want to see, it generally, you see a lot of running clocks in the second half of spring games and that types of thing. So, yeah, I mean, I think honestly, it is a whole lot of people who have spent the last year trapped inside their houses going, I would dearly love to go sit outside and watch something that reminds me of not the last year. So from that perspective, I absolutely get it. But yes, I think everyone goes into the spring game like ready to tailgate and excited and can't wait. And finally, football's back. And then you get in and you watch the first 5 minutes and it's just like, oh, right, the spring game, right. But all that said, yes, I am still legitimately excited to be there and take one more step back towards what should be a little dose of normalcy.
Yeah, you're right. They're not just paying for the spring game; they're paying to be in the stadium for the first time in over a year, and that's something that just that whole experience. It's not just about the game; it's also about going to the game and experiencing the being in the crowd. Because I remember back in college, like during the spring, like you're desperate for something to do. I was so desperate we almost went to a crew game back when they played at Ohio Stadium because we just wanted to experience, like, we just wanted to make that walk to the horseshoe again in the spring because we hadn't done it since the previous season, and you want to be part of that. And of course we didn't, you know. We
Was
didn't
it? We were desperate. We weren't soccer desperate, but we were desperate. Yeah.
correct. But it was nice to talk about. But yeah, it's not just, maybe it's like $50 for the practice and then $50 for the experience
Yeah,
is what they're
exactly.
paying
Yeah.
for.
Yeah, exactly. Just I mean, this will be the first time that anyone outside of families has been inside Ohio Stadium since the Penn State game in 2019. Like, think back to how long ago that was. That was before the week before the Michigan game in 2019, 2 weeks before the Wisconsin game in 2019, a month before the Clemson Fiesta Bowl in 2019. Like, that's, you think back to the Clemson Fiesta Bowl, it seems like a long time ago, and that was like a month before that, and that's the last time anyone outside of a few hundred people has been inside Ohio Stadium, which is really, really crazy. So yeah, I mean, I always get the urge to, like, if it's a halfway decent day, like I think Ohio State's had a pretty good run of luck with weather on spring game days. It's generally, at least I think Saturday is supposed to be 60 and cloudy, which is like, yeah, that's fine. Like that you'll take that in April, but you get outside. And I don't know if they're allowing tailgating this year. They might not be allowing tailgating, but like generally, like, you go tailgate a little bit, go inside, watch some football. Like, it's always a really nice way for like during a typical year for families with kids to let their kids go see a game in the Horseshoe and not have to spend $1 million to have a 4-year-old, want to go get popcorn and try and find Brutus and all that stuff. And it's like, I don't know if this is worth $120 a seat. Like in the spring game, it's just like, yeah, you want to go. Like when my daughter was young, I took her one year and I said, you can pick where you want to sit. And she's like, I want to sit by the band. And then it was like, well, the band's pretty loud. So now we're going to go sit down by where Brutus is. Like, okay. Like, and it's just kind of like wide open and you can just do whatever. And it's a lot of fun. And if you leave at halftime, it's fine because you paid $5. You didn't pay $180 to watch Ohio State and Oregon or whatever it is.
And I've told the story before about how when I was a kid, my buddy's dad won spring game tickets on the radio, and we just thought it was the coolest thing ever. Like, you won Ohio State tickets, and this is amazing. We were so fortunate. And then you get down there and you see them basically just handing them out of cardboard boxes, You're like, but I thought, it was a major award. And they're just giving them away back then. But it was still fun. I mean, you could sit in a deck, a double A, and like you're in the box seats basically, and you're thinking these are great seats. And then the football begins, and you're like, I can't see anything from here.
There are football players in front of me. Yes, there are jerky photographers in front of me.
With spring game, I love being up in C deck when there'd be enough people for it to be open, because I like being that high and being able to see, and that's why I choose to sit in the press box now.
Mm-hmm. Yes, because there's no point on earth higher than the Ohio Stadium press box. So yeah, that's the best view of all of the places. Yes. It's interesting to me. You look at the culture around the Ohio State spring game, and Ohio State is obviously not a typical football program just on the national scale, but the way the culture has built around the Ohio State spring game, where, when I was a student in the mid 90s, I feel like after the Rose Bowl year in the spring of 97, I feel like there were like 40,000, 50,000 people there, which is a ton of people back then for a spring game. I think that was probably the record. And it has just kind of grown and grown and grown and grown and grown to the point where you do have 100,000 in a lot of years. They have not had a full house for a number of years because they've been doing the stadium renovations. And then last year, obviously nothing at all. But, I think the last time they had the opportunity to have a full stadium, they had 97, 100,000 people there. And it's turned into this like huge annual event for Ohio State. And then you look at Michigan and they didn't have fans. They didn't have media. They never make a thing out of it. Like, even during a normal year, they have 10,000 people there and they don't do it as a scrimmage. It's just like a regular practice. And it's like, hey, come watch a practice. I don't understand that at all, because it seems like if you have an opportunity to make an event during a time of year when you don't normally have an event, like, that seems like something that would be a good thing to do and build excitement for your program.
Especially in a year like this where people, although I guess up in Michigan, they're probably still a little bit more locked down than Ohio, but just to get people moving, get, fans, players want to, the players are excited to have fans back. Ryan Day was asked about it this week, and he's like, they had to get accustomed to playing in front of nobody, and now they're going to have to get accustomed to playing in front of somebody again, but they're all looking forward to it. So, it is interesting how it is very much a thing at a lot of places, and Michigan doesn't even try. They don't even want to attempt for it to be a thing. And, it's the weather is a little worse up there, but that's so you never know what you're going to get in Ohio and Michigan this time of year. And usually the attendance is dictated, the attendance is dictated by the weather for Ohio State. Up there, it's dictated by, just don't want to do it.
Yeah, and I mean, you have people going to Detroit Tigers games right now. So the Detroit Tigers are extremely not very good at baseball this year, and the weather is the weather. And you're going to be under the same type of capacity limits with the current, me gesturing vaguely to everything in the world right now. So I mean, like, it's not that they couldn't have done it; they just literally chose not to do it, which. I mean, I know there's not a ton of excitement around the Michigan football program right now, but again, like, the Tigers are bad and have been bad for quite a while, and the Red Wings are bad and have been bad for quite a while, and you still have people showing up for those. So it seems like, yeah, you're exactly right. If they wanted to, they could absolutely do it, turn it into a thing. And, if you have 30,000 people instead of 100,000 people, like, whatever, who cares? It's a spring game. Like, it just seems like you're doing a disservice to your fans by not making that an opportunity. Because again, there are people with 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds in Michigan as well. who also probably can't get tickets for a reasonable price during the fall. So it's an opportunity for your fans to come in and see the team and like hear the band and all of the fun things that you can do at the spring game. And it's a good entry point for, young fans and, think a little longer term than just this fiscal quarter and, give your fans something back that doesn't really cost you that much. But just for some reason, that has just never been the mindset at Michigan. And I've always found that bizarre.
Do we think that reason is that it becomes a competition with Ohio State and it's a competition that they know they're not going to win? And it's always going to be Ohio State had 87,000, Michigan had 22,000. Look at this. This is ridiculous. Does it become a recruiting thing? Does it just become the air of superiority gets docked in that area? So they just like, well, we don't compete in this, so we can't possibly lose it.
So are you suggesting to me that Michigan is simply choosing not to participate because they're worried they're going to get blown out by Ohio State? Is that the suggestion I'm hearing? Because I want to make sure I'm interpreting this correctly.
I did not say that. And regarding spring games, yes. Regarding regular season games, no, I would never say that, Tom. But
we were talking about spring games. Why are you bringing up regular season games? I'm just asking a clarifying question from you. That's all.
Yes, that's what I'm saying in this specific realm of spring games and spring games only.
Mm-hmm.
I think they are ducking Ohio State's numbers.
You think they're worried Ohio State's going to hang 100,000 on them? Is that what you're hearing?
I think, Tom, that's exactly right because that answer is so great.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, as all of mine are. Yes, keep going.
But yeah, exactly. Hanging 100,000 on them. And I think that plays into it because they're just like, it would look bad. And so let's just we're not going to enter that race and we're going to do our own thing. It's just practice. And yeah, if it's just practice, then why not have more people there? And to me, it's just, it's ducking a competition that doesn't have to be a competition, but everybody will make it a competition, including Tom, me and you.
Mm-hmm. They also didn't let the media in at Michigan, which was extremely strange as well. And like the explanation was, well, Big Ten Network couldn't televise it. It's like, yes, well, you could have let other people in. You could have let local TV stations and writers and stuff in. Like, no, you don't want to do that either. And it's like, I mean, you're going to have to do this in front of actual people at some point this year, right? Like, and you have new coordinators. So like, yeah, it's going to look a little ragged that first year. Everyone, I think, understands that. Anyone who knows anything about football understands, like, if you're going to try and put in a whole new defensive system, it's going to look a little rough that first time. Everyone sort of understands that. And it's just, I think Harbaugh at this point is just so gun shy that it's like, he just doesn't want he can't handle any more negative publicity. And, if you go out there and the defense is getting torn to shreds and the middle of the defensive line is getting gashed and the cornerbacks are terrible again, it's like, you're setting yourself up for a summer of, oh no, everything is terrible. So now everyone just goes, well, he probably did this because everything is terrible. So you just sort of assume that everything's terrible. And so like, again, you haven't actually accomplished anything.
I wonder if they're going to try to get their season opener against Western Michigan taken off of television, where it's like, you know what, let's we don't want anybody seeing it. Let's wait till Washington game.
Yeah, that's. I don't think Western Michigan's supposed to be very good this year. And when has Michigan ever lost a season opener to a lesser team? I mean, I don't think that's a big concern.
That's true. Maybe what happens for the Washington game is they'll have somebody like with hedge clippers right at the big wire from the satellite truck, and like soon as it kicks off, you just chop that wire down, and that way you can play the game. I don't know what they'll do with the in-house media. Sleeping gas, something more lethal, something like that, so that nobody can see this game other than the fans. And then if they don't want the fans, you can shut down the cellular service, and then because there's only one door out of the building, just lock that door.
Yeah, that keeps them there though.
But they can't go anywhere. Eventually,
so this is like an indefinite detention thing. They're just going to stay there forever.
Yeah, and then they will like have to feed off of each other, and it just becomes like an alive situation where eventually one person's going to be left, and the best story they have to tell isn't going to be anything about what game they saw. So it's like that's going to be the last thing on anybody's mind, where he comes out the last survivor of this Michigan prison game, and they'll be like, "Sir or ma'am, what was it like in there?" And the first thing they'll say is like, "Cade McNamara is terrible." And like, and then Harbaugh will be like, no, you're supposed to talk about the death and the consuming of human flesh. And of course, they'll just want to be talking about Michigan football and
Michigan football, the Donner Party of football. That's about how a lot of seasons. I mean, the ending of the seasons have been pretty grim recently. So I'm just, I mean, I'm not married to it, but I'm just saying, like, there might be something there.
That's why if you can get the opportunity to turn back as part of, like, those who stay will have to consume human flesh. But if you can have an opportunity to leave that party and head back, or to head to the transfer portal, by all means, find safety. Do that.
I don't know why I ever worry about what our shows are going to turn into when we don't have a real strict rundown to start the show. I'm always like, I wonder where this is going to go. This will be interesting. Obviously, this is where we're going to end up. The natural ending to this.
So, yes. Tom, before we start the show, have you ever had Ohio Valley style pizza?
Is Ohio Valley style pizza, is that like kind of like Eastern Ohio?
Yes,
like Steubenville and West Virginia Wheeling. Yeah. So I don't know if you're intentionally setting me up for this, and I don't know how you could possibly be setting. My next door neighbors are opening a De Felice's Pizza in Granville or in Newark in like a week. So I am about to try it because I'm very excited to try it. They grew up in West Virginia and Eastern Ohio, I think, and we're big fans of De Felice's Pizza. So I've never had it, but there is one opening literally like walking distance from my house in like a week. So I'm about to have strong opinions on Ohio Valley pizza, but I have none right now.
Now let's make sure we're understanding the same style of pizza. It's like a pizza with sauce and a little bit of cheese, and they bake it, and then they pull it out of the oven and put it in like whatever box to go or whatever, and then throw cheese and toppings on it, like cold cheese and cold toppings. And then here you go.
I don't know. It hasn't opened yet. I'll let you know in a week.
But that's just, it's a very lazy person's pizza. I mean, you're eating cold cheese and cold toppings, Tom. Good luck to your neighbors. I mean,
I don't have any idea if that is the style of pizza that they are serving or not. De Felice Brothers apparently is a very popular chain in Eastern Ohio, but this is the first one within 100 miles of us here, so I'm not sure.
I'm sure it'll be better than that. Tom, let's talk about the black stripes, because I completely nailed my prediction.
Mm-hmm. About the band.
No, the Ohio State losing black stripes, the players losing the black stripes.
Mm-hmm.
I asked you for your prediction last week who it would be. Mm-hmm. You said Denzel Burke.
I said it could be any number of guys, and I said, mm-hmm.
I gave you every single option. I put everybody out there for you, and you ultimately chose Denzel Burke, the corner, who is a fine player in his own right. I believe the three names that I said, Travion Henderson, Reed Carrico, and Emeka Egbuka. And since that show, those three players have all lost their black stripes.
Mm-hmm.
So what's going on with your guy, Burke?
I don't know. I haven't, I'm hoping to see him show out at the spring game on Monday, and then or on Saturday. And then, he'll lose his stripe obviously after that. I wonder if Ryan Day was just trying to give you a win here. I mean, that was the first thing that occurred to me, was like, yes, I did have Fred Henderson is, like my second choice there, but I did ultimately give him to Tony, and Tony did ultimately pick a number of different people. And you've had a terrible year of predictions. I mean, let's just be honest. Let's just call a spade a spade. You've been
Name
off
6.
I mean, only 6. I'm not sure I could narrow it down so much, but it's been a tough year for you, and that's okay. So I think Ryan Day just wanted to give you a W here. That's very nice. That's very charitable. We know he's a charitable gentleman. He has his own foundation. So it seems like another opportunity for him to, share with the less fortunate.
Thank you. Do you expect another freshman to lose their black stripe this spring? And before you answer that, Tom, I went back and researched all of the black stripes lost in the spring by true freshmen. And the first one was Austin Mack in 2016. The next one was Tommy Togiai in 2018. And then Ryan Day becomes head coach. And in 2019, you've got Zach Harrison and Garrett Wilson. And then nothing last year because nobody was good enough. And then
also.
And then there's been 5 this year. And so it's like, is the recruiting better? Is Ryan Day softer? is all of this is not softer, but more lenient, or is this Urban Meyer was just too strict and wouldn't allow it unless something crazy and well beyond the norm happened? I think, do we make anything of this? Do we make something of this? Because when you look at the guys who have lost it in the spring so far, that's a pretty good, even though before this year it was Garrett Wilson, Zach Harrison, Tommy Togiai, and Austin Mack. So it's a little too early to judge the guys who have lost theirs this year. But there's a decent track record there of freshmen losing it in the spring. Should we make something of this, Tom?
Well, that's the question. Is this like great inflation, or is this that this is legitimately that great a group of freshmen? And you look at the guys who lost it, and there are a lot of the guys who I think would have been in that conversation. Like, there's a certain type of player that loses their stripe early, and it's the like the real high work ethic, high character, very talented. So you're going to show it on the field too. Because there's certain spots, like it is very hard for offensive linemen to lose it early. Like no matter how great they are in terms of person and work ethic, like that is a tough spot to lose it very early. These guys are, skill position guys. That's a spot where you see it a lot. I am willing to kind of give them the benefit of the doubt on this, that this is not just a pure grade inflation thing. Someone on Twitter, I tweeted out your stat that, more people have lost it this year than the entire rest of the traditions since 2012 combined. And someone said, well, this is obviously like, well, you got to keep people happy. You got the transfer portal and all that kind of stuff. It's like, I don't think it's that. These guys are all people who are in line to see the field at some point this year. Like you're not going to transfer if you're in line to see the field the fall of your freshman year. I think this is just, these are a lot of real high character guys. These are a lot of guys who, when we watch practice, are kind of standing out on the practice reports that Nevada Buck is getting and that some of our other staffers are getting from sources inside the program. These are the guys who are standing out. It may just be like, this is a really remarkable class from an individual perspective. Now, if this is, if this turns into, everybody gets a pony and everyone has completed it by the end of the spring, like, well, okay, then, what are the odds that everyone is so perfect and magical? Like, not that high. So, I think, until we see otherwise, I think that, these are exactly the kind of players who you'd expect to see lose it early. So it doesn't necessarily strike me as like something is wonky here.
Well, and you look at Garrett Wilson, Zach Harrison, 5-star guys. Mm-hmm. The three of the first five, Travion Henderson, Emeka Egbuka, and Jack Sawyer, 5-star guys. And then you've got Marvin Harrison, who grew up knowing and having the position in his brain and his body. So that's not so much a surprise. And then Reed Carrico, where you're down a middle linebacker for Ohio State this year in Dallas Gant. So he's kind of he's moved up one basically.
And so he's a son of a coach, right? He's got the same, he's kind of got the same basic football DNA thing that Marvin Harrison does.
Yeah. And so like these guys all make sense. So are you going to stick with your Denzel Burke prediction with this new information? And also, again, Tom, as I tweeted out, 22% of all freshman black stripes in Ohio State history have been Harrisons. Mm-hmm. And then 77% have not. So there are no more Harrisons.
I was going to say, I have, my choices are Benjamin Harrison and William Henry Harrison. So I'm going to say William Henry, but it's not going to last long. That's my pick. That's
a good shot. So are you sticking with Denzel Burke or no?
I think I have to kind of, I think I've got to stick with my pick here. There are a couple other guys that I think are possibilities. Evan Pryor is a possibility. Jaden Ballard. You saw just a little bit of Jaden Ballard on the punt team, on punt coverage team, and he was one of the guys who was like crashing down and looking to make a play. And they're going no contact. He's not actually trying to block the punt, but he was getting in there very consistently. So, he may be someone as well. Because again, like you got the wide receivers are a spot where these guys are getting play early, and so he may be someone who has an opportunity. But yeah, I'm gonna stick with my pick of Denzel Burke. I think he's in the same way that Reed Carrico had an opportunity because there's a lot of there's not a lot of depth in middle linebacker. Well, there's not a lot of depth at corner right now. Burke is someone who has kind of come up in our practice reports as someone who's been somewhat impressive early. So I'll stick to my guns and go with him. Are you going to try and double down and once again beat me with the next one too? So you have.
Well, I mean, the three guys that I have said have all been selected, so I can't just stick with those.
Who are you going to pick for the next one is my question.
Well, I think I'm going with Kyle McCord, who I'm going to put it on his spring game performance. I think that'll be his best final. He'll put it all together and show it out there, and they'll put him in a position to succeed for the fans. And then there'll be a big ceremony after the game where they'll bring everybody out there and adorn him the next black stripe, and then you'll have two quarterbacks that transfer right out after they see that, and so then it's Kyle McCord as your starting quarterback.
Yeah, I'm not sure you're going to nail that prediction exactly, but Kyle McCord in general is also not a bad pick.
Okay, all right. Well, then, what I do think we need to remember is don't make too much of the spring game performances by the quarterbacks. You go back and look at the Joe Burrows and the Dwayne Haskins and how they performed. You don't have to go much further than the last spring game for Ohio State when Justin Fields was 4 of 13 for 131 yards and 1 touchdown, and that 1 touchdown went 98 yards. So you take that one out, and he was 3 for 12 for 33 yards. And as I said at the time, if you really look at it, only one of those passes were bad. The others were not just dropped or thrown away. And so I don't know. I think you'll see some good performances because that's usually what happens when you go back to the Joe Burrow and the Dwayne Haskins when they were competing. They were throwing for 270, 300 yards. Sometimes they do it for both teams. I think like Dwayne Haskins did. And so I think there's going to be some considerable yards. But if there's a poor performance, Tom, who cares?
And I had Kirk Barton on the morning show on Wednesday morning, and he talked about the spring game and made the point that we've made in the past, which is the scrimmage the week before the spring game is actually kind of the biggest one because you have all of the guys playing in that one. What he said is Thayer Munford played in that scrimmage last week. Thayer Munford is going to play maybe a drive on Saturday, so you're not really getting the full and complete picture. This is very much like it's a scrimmage, it's a practice. It is by far and away the most information we're going to have, in terms of firsthand viewing at any point this spring. So we have to kind of use the information probably and maybe give that a little bit of a disproportionate emphasis in our analysis and our view of where guys are right now. But yes, you're right. You have to. You will have guys who absolutely explode in the spring game. I mean, everyone always says Bam Childress. Kirk said Solomon Thomas had 7 sacks in one spring game and then had 2 during his regular season career. You'll have guys who just completely explode. Mike Thomas had a really great, huge spring game one year and then had 2 catches total in the next 2 years. You can't read too much into it because a lot of times it's just, well, this guy's matched up against a walk-on. And so that's not going to be representative of what he's matched up with during a typical practice and during most games during the fall. So, and kind of vice versa as well. I don't want to spoil anything. Travion Henderson is probably not going to have a good game. That's because running backs generally don't have good games in the spring game. Don't look at that and go, Travion Henderson is terrible. Why did they take his black stripe off? Probably because we're getting soft as a society. That's not actually the takeaway you should have if Travion Henderson has, 4 carries for 12 yards. And that is a super typical running back stat line for the spring game. You have these weird wonky offensive lines with guys who have not played with each other before. You're probably not tackling. So it's well, he didn't break any tackles. Well, he didn't actually give the option to break any tackles because anytime anyone gets close to him or taps him, that's it. So yeah, it's you can't read too much into the spring game. It is if you go into it thinking, hey, this is going to be fun. We'll get to go sit in the sunshine in Ohio Stadium and watch a little football or watch a little Ohio State football on BTN or however you're going to consume this game. If you're just treating it hey, this will be fun to watch a little football, that's great. But I mean, this is very much like baseball spring training games where it's yeah, like an early spring baseball spring training games where it's like, yeah, the starters are going to play for about 3 innings. And then, you know, at the end of the day, like, does it really matter which team wins? No, not at all, because the game doesn't count. And, you know, winning the game is not really what the main focus of the day. So yeah, enjoy it, but don't read too much into it.
I remember looking so forward to finally seeing Maurice Claret because he was supposed to play in the Army All-American game and he was hurt, so he didn't. So then the first chance we're actually going to get to see him, well, and I'll go even further. I was supposed to see him play against Massillon in the state playoffs, but they got upset by one of the Cleveland teams. And so I ended up seeing Massillon versus whoever Anthony Gonzalez was playing for, one of the Cleveland teams that
St. Ignatius, I believe.
Yeah. And so that, you know, we didn't get to see Maurice Claret then. Then finally, the first time I ever got to see him was the Ohio State spring game in 2002. Tom, do you know what his line was for that game?
I don't, but that was the game that Kirk was talking about with me that ended 6-3. So I'm assuming he ran for like 400 yards. It was a real offensive explosion.
5 carries for 17 yards.
Bust.
So, bust. Yeah, it was not that exciting. But he had the best numbers. I'm just looking here. Pat O'Neill, 1 for -1. Lydell Ross, 5 for -6.
That's accurate.
Scott Mullen, 4 for -25. Then we go to the Scarlet team. Maurice Hall, 6 for 12. Craig Krenzel, 7 for 2. Jajai Riley, 2 for 1. And Jim Otis, 1 for -9.
You know, you go through that list of running backs outside of Claret, and you know those were not the most mobile quarterbacks in the history of Ohio State football. It's like, yeah, okay. Outside of Claret, I'm not sure what kind of conclusions we can draw from that.
He did have 3 catches for 25 yards, so there is that. But yeah, don't get too worked up on what you see unless it's awesome, and then just go crazy.
Well, that just means the defense is terrible. So,
oh crap, that's right.
Yeah. I need to go to one of those like like craft painting things, and paint like this inspirational watercolor. There's always something to complain about. That's the beauty of the Ohio State spring game. There's always something to complain about.
Live, laugh, love. There's always something to complain about.
Live, laugh, scream at the coordinators. Yes.
So I just got a couple of things for you, Tom, before we get out of here. We also know the spring game is where tight ends catch the ball. So that's always fun. We know this is the year of the tight ends at Ohio State. So I'm going to give you an over-under on total tight end catches for this game. All right. Just process it. I'm going to go 7.5.
I'm going to go under because I think what's going to happen is Jeremy Ruckert's going to play about a drive and a half. So he's going to have like 1, maybe 2. And then I think you're going to see a lot of you might see a decent amount of check down from these quarterbacks because, I'm sure they're all going to be going, I want to make a play. But also with as much as Ohio State stresses not making mistakes and not turning the ball over, I think you're going to see a lot of check down to running backs and that kind of stuff. So I'll say under 7.5, and it's like 2 for Ruckert, 2 for Cade Stover, 1 for G. Scott, 1 for Joe Royer. And maybe Sam Hart gets 1 instead, but yeah, 7.5 is a pretty decent number. But yeah, I think it's gonna be. I don't know that anyone has more than like 2.
Well, and this is all dependent on G. Scott being out there because like we didn't see him on Monday, if I recall. I saw him initially, then he was inside. I don't know if he's getting treatment or something like that. So, but that's typical for this time of year. Will anybody throw for more than 175 yards?
No.
Yeah, 3 quarterbacks? No, just right away. No.
No, I don't think so. I think you're going to see. I said no immediately, and now I'm regretting my choice. And by no, I mean yes. Yes. I think someone will. I said that too quickly because I think you're going to. No, I'm going to go back to no. Here's why. In my head, I'm doing this calculation based on a full game. We're not going to see a full game. We're going to see like half a game. No one's. I think I'm going to go under on all of yours because I think you've calibrated this to a full football game, and I think the answer is we're actually going to see half of a football game. So no. But
remember, Kyle McCord is probably going to play 2/3 of a game. If the other 2 are playing a half, or I don't do fractions, but think you're going to see him quite a bit. I think 175 is pretty standard, other than the 2019. Tom, I'm going to go because I think Joe Burrow and Dwayne Haskins both went over, but that was just two quarterbacks. So, you said yes, though.
No, I said no, and then I said yes, and then I said no. So my vote is 2-1 no.
All right, got to go with the unanimous the vote that wins out. So, okay, no. Then the question that gets asked every year, every spring game, who is this year's Bam Childress or Torian Washington, who essentially comes out of nowhere as a receiver? Doesn't necessarily have to be a receiver. Before you give your answer, I'm going to say Marvin Harrison, because when we see him at practice, he's always scoring touchdowns. And a lot of, those are always just red zone drills and stuff like that. But I also think he could be used in other parts of the field that may become touchdowns. So I'm going to go with Marvin Harrison as this year's Bam Childress, or Barn Childress, if you will. And I think you could see, like 6 for 70, something like that.
See, I'm going to have to disagree with that, because I think the Bam Childress implies he's going to do it in the spring game, and then you're not going to see him in the fall.
Well,
see, that's the problem, because I think you're going to have young guy who really shows out in the spring game is not necessarily Bam Childress. That's you've got a decent possibility that you've got I don't know.
Does that be Jaden Ballard or something? Or
yeah, it could be Jaden Ballard, someone like that who has because he could catch. Jaden Ballard could run a couple 9 routes and catch a couple 50-yard touchdowns, and then he becomes the story of the spring. And it's like, but you're not necessarily expecting him to play. I think he's going to contribute on special teams. He's probably going to play a little bit this fall, and he's going to play. He'll be much more of a contributor down the line than Childress was. But this year, it's like that's such a deep room that Jaden Ballard is not a bad pick at all, because it's like he's the type of receiver who might make those really flashy plays, whereas Marvin Harrison might be,
or something like that.
Yeah, Marvin Harrison might be more of a 6 catches for 85 yards, and if 2 of them are touchdowns, then he becomes that guy. And if none of them are touchdowns, it's like, wow, that was kind of a good day. But hey, Jaden Ballard, did you see the one play he made? Like the year that you mentioned the Justin Fields 2 years ago. Like Ben Victor was like the big star receiver that day, and he had, I think, 1 catch for 98 yards. And it's like when the defensive back fell down. But like, hey, did you see the play Ben Victor made? Like that's literally all I remember from that year's spring game is that one play where Justin Fields heaved it 98 yards to Ben Victor. So I guess that was the Ben Victor year. I don't know.
What do you think Dallas Gant would go with?
Well, Dallas Gant's pick always is Chris Olave, but Chris Olave, I'm suspecting, is going to play about. I think Chris Olave may play about 4 more snaps than you and I do. So probably not expecting a huge day statistically from Chris Olave. And at that point, you got to wonder, is that a concern for this fall? He barely played in the spring game. Do they know what they have with him? And the answer,
exactly,
I suspect, is yes.
Number of series for Chris Olave, I'll put the over under at 2.5.
I would probably take the under on that, honestly, because you got to remember the whole point of this is not like win the game. The whole point of this is let's see what we have from a coaching staff perspective. So they have a crap load of young wide receivers that they know what they have with Garrett Wilson. They know what they have with Chris Olave. They don't need to see those guys. They need to see the younger guys. They need to see Jaden Ballard and Emeka Egbuka and Marvin Harrison and G. Scott, if he's able to play, and Julian Fleming, and all of those guys. That's what you got to see. And like this is the day for those guys to kind of like take that next step and kind of launch their careers a little bit. This is not the Chris Olave Garrett Wilson day. Like this was the Garrett Wilson day 2 years ago. He had a big leaping catch in the corner of the end zone. I remember that. So I lied. I remember 2 things from that game.
Oh wow! Look at you.
But that's what this is for. That's for the early enrollee freshmen, the guys who were freshmen last year who didn't get to play a lot. Those are the guys who are going to have big days. The veteran guys are going to spend an awful lot of time standing on the sideline with their shoulder pads unbuckled.
So we've had a request to talk a little bit about the special teams and how that's looking right now and what to expect. We don't know if they'll be splitting up the special teams. I don't know necessarily, like, is Jake Siebert the kicker for the Scarlet and is Dom DiMaccio the kicker for the Gray? We don't know that, but I'm sure they'll both get opportunities. We haven't really seen, other than drills early on when they do special teams drills, like couldn't tell you how one guy is doing. I know there's Yeah, and I assume the same will be with Jesse Mirko and Michael O'Shaughnessy punting, where you guys are just on those teams. And even though we don't talk about it a lot, like it's really really important that those positions get shored up. We've seen. I thought it was interesting watching on Monday the practice of downing the punts inside basically inside the two. They're like just standing there and first they'd run down and then get in place. And they had a number of guys doing that. And I've seen them working on blocking the punt right, off of the foot, trying to time it perfectly, stay away from the punter's body. So there's a lot going on with the special teams. But there's Nevada had something on the Ask the Insiders board about wanting to return to a more aggressive running return game, which I will believe that when I see it, because it just doesn't seem like, I don't think that's part of Ryan Day's DNA necessarily, but Parker Fleming, your special teams coordinator, probably wants like, yes, let's be aggressive. I want to do something. Let's do something. And so it would be nice to get back to that. Ohio State just needs to start recruiting athletes because you need somebody to return these things. But where are you on? Just go ahead and give us whatever you think about the special teams that's on your mind right now.
Well, I think it's the interesting thing with the special teams is I wonder how much of the just let DeMario McCall stand back there and just wave, wave, get away from the ball and watch it bounce and take it at the 25 was Justin Fields is the quarterback, and Justin Fields is probably going to be able to move the ball down the field very quickly. And this year you've got younger quarterbacks, so maybe it's a little bit less of a sure thing. So maybe if you have the opportunity to make a play and, set yourself up with some good field position, or heaven forbid, return a kick for a touchdown for the first time since 2010, I believe. I believe that was Jordan Hall was the last person to return a kickoff for Ohio State for a touchdown. That, maybe it's a little more important to get that. Again, I think the offense is probably going to be fine this year. It'll be okay. But without a Justin Fields type at quarterback, like maybe that's a little bit more of a point of emphasis to try and, steal some points or steal some hidden yardage in that kicking game. So if you were going to do it, this would be the year to do it, because you really didn't have to do it last year. And you might not have to do it this year, but if you can, if that's an option, like, yeah, sure. But, again, I think I'm really intrigued by the idea of them trying to steal possessions too. Like, can you do an onside kick? Can you onside kick in weird times that are not traditional onside kick times? I mean, like when you say that, I'm sure everyone immediately goes back to the Maryland game 2 years ago with they're up 14-0 or something in the second quarter and they onside kick just because it's like, well, they saw something on film and they had this cool onside kick in their bag. And so it's like, well, if we don't use it, like this is the opportunity to use it. So if we don't use it, we'd lose it. So sure, go ahead and do it. Like, and just like steal a possession. That is statistically like a really smart play if you can catch people off guard with it. So, go ahead and do that and try and steal a possession from Penn State, try and steal a possession from Oregon, try and steal a possession from whoever. And, that can be a real backbreaker for the other team in terms of momentum.
We were talking about this, not you and I, but on the Ask the Insiders message board about Ohio State and the special teams. And somebody mentioned that Ryan Day and Ohio State need to look at what Kansas State does with their kick returns, because back in 2019, they had 4 kickoff returns for touchdowns. And I went back and looked, and since Ohio State's last in 2010, Kansas State has had 19 kickoff return touchdowns. And then if you go back 1 year further to 2009, because Ohio State had 1 in 2010 and 1 in 2009, Kansas State had another 4 in 2009. So since 2009, Kansas State has had 23 and Ohio State has had 2. And I think one is they are receiving more kickoffs, Kansas State, obviously, but they're also very much more aggressive, and that's part of their game. And if Ohio State wants to make that part of their game, and I always say, if you have a bad offense, it's on purpose. If you have a special teams that isn't aggressive, that's also on purpose. It's like there are ways to make things better. There are ways to make your offense better through the spread and things like that. And there are ways to make your special teams better. So, it's good that they're finally, or not finally, but that this is a process that may be hitting the return game in the spring or in this season. The last question here, Tom, we don't really get into names of transfers, but at Codith 44 wants to know, how long after the spring game do you expect the transfers to start happening, and how many do you anticipate happening?
I think you're going to start seeing stuff middle of the following week, you're probably going to see some guys, because I think you get out of the spring, they evaluate the film from the spring, they kind of grade everyone out, and they start having those post-spring conversations with people about, here's where you are, here's where you need to improve, here's where you stand on the depth chart, like all that kind of stuff. And those are sometimes the conversations that lead to people going, so my path to the playing field involves not being here. And that is a conversation that's going to happen at they're probably having that conversation at, well, I'm just going to say Kansas, probably not Kansas, but because they have like 40 people on their roster, but go to Wake Forest or go to Vanderbilt, and there's probably having that conversation. Like, it's, you are not where you need to be. And I don't know, it's going to take a lot to get there in time, in time for the fall. And, so this is not like just an Ohio State thing. So you're going to have those conversations the week after the game. I think you're going to start seeing guys, Wednesday to Sunday next week, at some point in there, someone's going to put their name in the portal. And, I think there's a decent possibility Ohio State brings someone in through the portal and also loses a few people through the portal this year.
And I believe the rule is they'll have to get below 85 to bring anybody in, as I understand it, though I don't know that anybody has actually ever clarified that. Like, anybody on your roster doesn't count necessarily against a number if they're using their free year or whatever. But I think if you're going to bring somebody in, I think you have to be under the number. And I haven't counted lately, but I would expect, if I set as we do here, set an over under on like 4.5 guys after spring to leave by June. I think I might go with the over without taking a look and like actually going through and saying, well, this guy.
Yeah.
With Max Ray already being one of them, that takes the number down a little bit.
Yeah, are we counting Max Ray as one of the people who is part of that 4.5?
No, you would have to pay for that little extra.
Okay, pay for the hook. Yeah,
yeah.
4.5 is pretty good, because I think 4 or 5 is kind of about where I landed without going like position group by position group.
That's typical,
and that's exactly. And there are plenty of teams. I think Penn State and Michigan, I think both in recent years have had like 11 guys in the transfer portal. So 4.5 that's a pretty low number actually. And you're going to look at certain positions, and it's like, this guy is going into his 3rd or 4th year and is like, doesn't have a very clear path to the field. And then it's a question of, does this guy just want to stay at Ohio State, finish his degree, maybe get another Big Ten championship ring, maybe get another pair of gold pants, and kind of finish out your career, or is playing time more important? And then you're looking at your other options. And so, there's definitely not there's not a roster crunch number where they have to get, I think numbers wise, they're fine right now. So it's not, this is not the old Alabama, like, they've got 97 scholarship players. So good. The over under is 12.5 of people transferring, and don't bet the under. So, you have, I don't think anyone has to transfer, but you are definitely going to have some guys who decide that they, their path to the field is easier somewhere else, and they want to take that step.
Yeah. And they should, go play somewhere and, have some fun. This is college years, man. You can't just spend it all the time practicing.
I think they practice at other schools too. I'm pretty sure that's a thing that, most schools, I don't know, go to Bowling Green. I don't know,
but at least they get to play.
That's true. They do get to play. Get to play.
Anything else, Tom, before we go? We wanted to, today was going to be talking about the receivers or the quarterbacks that we were supposed to get this week. Instead, we will get the receivers on Thursday, and there will be no quarterbacks talking to the quarterbacks this spring. Maybe after the game. I don't know. Probably not, because they are being kept hermetically sealed in a large envelope inside the deep locked rooms of the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. So that's why we didn't have anything to talk about today. So I apologize for that.
That's why we thought we were going to go 25 minutes and now have gone about an hour. So, but not having the quarterback talk is interesting to me, because one of these 3 guys is going to be one of the sort of de facto faces of one of the most popular, biggest programs in the entire nation in a matter of like 4 months. So I'm not sure anyone's doing anyone any favors by keeping them locked up in a closet right now. And as with NIL stuff coming, like there's all sorts of talk of image and all that kind of stuff, and build your brand and all that kind of stuff, and keeping people under lock and key is not a way for them to build their brand. And it's not like, we have talked to other freshmen this year, so it's not like there's a blanket ban on talking to true freshmen. So, and a couple of these guys are not true freshmen. So I understand that they probably want to avoid, putting guys in a situation where they, are answering questions they don't want to answer. But I don't feel like there's an overly hostile press corps asking questions right now. And, I think all of these guys have gone through media training, and I think at some point you just kind of have to trust your guys. Like if you can't trust your guys to talk to the media for 10 minutes, like you're going to trust them to run your program. Like I think there's a little disconnect there. So we'll see. Hopefully we get to talk to them after the spring game. That would be fine to get some ideas from them on how they think the spring went and where they think things stand and how they think they played, and thoughts on playing inside Ohio Stadium in front of a bunch of fans for the first time. Like that would all be wonderful and interesting. And I guess we'll see if that happens on Saturday.
Well, and we have talked to CJ Stroud and Jack Miller back in January or February of 2020 when we talked to all of the early arrivals, early enrollees, and basically they sit there for about 30 to 45 minutes and just get the same questions about, hey, you versus Jack Miller, you versus CJ Stroud. So it's like they've already been through that, but It's been 16 months since we've talked to either of those guys, and we haven't talked to Kyle McCord at all because there was no early enrollee media day like we usually get. And of course, you understand why there wasn't something like that this year. But yeah, to keep these guys away from the media is, and we talked to Travion Henderson and Evan Pryor this year, this spring. And so it was disappointing, not totally unexpected, but we will talk to the receivers on Thursday and also special teams coordinator Parker Fleming. So that'll be his first chance to talk to us since ever, and this is his first year. So of course, it wouldn't be like he should have been talking to us previously, but that'll be interesting to hear from him. It's going to be a pretty busy day Thursday, so we'll have something after that for you. Probably plenty to talk about, I would assume, even though Brian Hartline, when you ask him about stuff, like he downplays a lot of his guys and, for his own reasons. So there's going to be some reading between the lines I think we might have to do there. And, yes, he's doing well, but he's got to keep working. And of course, that's going to be the same for everybody. So we'll try to read through those lines, Tom, right?
Yeah. And that's a lot of the spring. And it's, we get, you get these like small windows of opportunity to watch practice, and you're trying not to draw too many conclusions, but this is also the only, firsthand data we have. And so, yeah, there is some tea leaf reading in terms of how players, how coaches are talking about players, and you kind of have to know the individual coach and, hey, this guy, the next time Kerry Combs isn't excited about someone will be the first time in history. So it's like, okay, you kind of have to dial that back a little bit. And Hartline is a little bit more on the other side, where he's a little more conservative with his praise. And, it's not he's bad mouthing his guys. It's just, he's not quite as effusive in his praise. Let's put it that way. So you can maybe, turn the dial up a little bit with him, and you can kind of, read between the lines. So it is, there's a whole process here, and we've mostly figured it out at this point, but we'll get another chance to work our magic tomorrow on Thursday.
And then Saturday morning we'll have a preview show for you guys, a live one. Sometime, I don't know, probably from outside the stadium, I'm guessing.
We haven't heard like specific protocols for the spring game yet. So yeah, it will either be very early in the morning, outside the stadium, or, a little later in the morning, 9 in the morning or something like that inside the stadium. But yeah, we'll try and give you a little spring game preview from either outside or inside Ohio Stadium, depending on what we can do and where we can do it. And then we'll be, of course, covering the full game. And then after the game, we'll have our usual post-game instant reaction show where we dramatically overreact to lots of stuff we just told you doesn't really matter.
Can we go with that show? Because we've done, hour and a half after like the Clemson game. can we go longer than the actual spring game?
I have a feeling we're going to get kicked out of the stadium at some point. So, we could probably go. We can definitely go longer than the starters are playing in the spring game. I don't know if we can go longer than the actual spring game, but and you do run into an issue where it's like once you start talking too much about the spring game, you start reading way too much into stuff. So yeah, we'll see. Well, but those are usually, we're usually good for at least 45 minutes or so after those games. So, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot to talk about because, just about every position group on the field is going to be, there is someone or something to watch.
Yeah. It's just unfortunate you're going to have so many guys missing and, but that is the spring. But we will still look forward to it. 12 p.m. on the Big Ten Network Saturday, but we'll talk about it before then. So that will do it. Make sure to check out BuckeyesScoop.com as the train rolls by. So we'll go ahead and get out of here. YouTube.com/BuckeyesScoop. There's just so much stuff there as well. And again, if you're not yet a member of the site, I would recommend it. And thank you all for listening, and we will talk to you guys tomorrow.